All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining in. My name is Shruti Sundaresan, and I'm working as the program coordinator with India Science Festival. We're just going to wait for 30 seconds more to allow more attendees to come into the webinar room, and thereafter we'll do a very quick introduction and begin with our festivals session for today. Very exciting book conversation as part of our series. And I'll just wait for 30 seconds for more people to join in and start thereafter. Okay, good evening, everyone, once again, and thank you for joining in this webinar. Very exciting evening lined up for everybody today. This is India Science Festival, the flagship science communication event under the Foundation for Advancing Science and Technology, which is FAST India. It's a newly formed non-profit organization, and India Science Festival is in its third edition. While we would have really loved to meet all of you in an offline on-ground setting, owing to the pandemic, the festival is being held online on Zoom. And of course, we've got to make the best of whatever circumstances exist at the moment. And we're here to bring the best of science tech, science journalism, science communication to your homes. The festival is just a click away. All of our events are absolutely open to all, free for everybody to attend. And there's something to do for everyone at this festival. The festival features a series of very interesting talks, panel discussions, workshops, fireside chats, demonstrations, competitions, games. And the whole idea is to celebrate science and connect young people and the public with scientists, researchers, public engagement practitioners, science communicators, industry professionals, innovators, illustrators, journalists, and more. Now, the idea for this session today is to bring to light a very interesting new book. And I'm very sure that you're all going to be, you're all set for a very we ride, because this session is going to bring to light India's space adventures. But before we get to know more about this book, we are keen to know more about our attendees. So I'm going to launch a very quick poll on your screen, and we would love to know a little more about your background. So if you could please answer 3 questions for us. The first one being, can you tell us a little about yourself? The second question being, what background do you best identify with? The third question being, have you attended any of our events in the previous years? We just keep this poll on for a few more seconds, wait for everyone to give in their answers, and then I'll share the results with all of you. A few more seconds for the poll results to come in. All right, let's stop the poll and see the results on our screens. So, maximum number of our attendees are undergraduate students. We have a few school students with us, a few postgrad students with us, a small percentage of faculty members with us. 1% of PhD postdoc students, 1% of professionals from the industry, 3% from the business and entrepreneurship background, 1% are homemakers, and 1% belong to others. So from the background that we have here, 39% are engineering from the engineering background, 15% belong to life sciences, biological sciences, 7% mathematics, 11% science communication, 7% arts humanities, 1% business entrepreneurship, 13% are from the education background, 7% from others. All right, and the third question tells me that 93% of our attendees have said that this is their first ISF event, and 7% have said that they have attended our events in the previous years. So thank you for joining in to all the attendees who have been with us before, and a very warm welcome to the new attendees. And I really hope you enjoy the event that we have in store for you. The festival is on till 8th to 23rd January. So these are the last few days of the festival, and Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday are the next 3 days where we have a lot of events planned for everybody. So make sure to join us in the coming days too. And with that, can I please invite on stage our panelists and our moderator for today, Spurti, Nirupama, and Sonal. Could I please request you to turn on your audio and video? A very quick introduction for our moderator here today, who will thereafter go on to introduce our panelists. Sonal Katyal is a fantastic science communicator and public engagement practitioner who's currently working as the comms officer at NCBS in Bangalore, and is also a fellow at Superheroes Against Superbugs. Sonal, thank you so much for joining in. Sonal has been with ISF for the past year and has been contributing actively to so many of our events. And Sonal, it's such a pleasure to host you at the festival. Spurti and Nirupama will now be introduced by Sonal, and thereafter we'll take the session ahead. Request all of our attendees to put in their questions for the panelists in the Q&A box, and Sonal will take them towards the end. Thank you so much to all three of you for being a part of this session. Sonal, over to you. Take it ahead.
Thank you so much, Shruti, for such a kind introduction. And I'm very excited, especially to see such a diverse audience we have today. So for everyone, today we are going to speak to two very talented folks behind an adorably scientific book called India's Space Adventures. Let me see if you can see it. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and it encapsulates everything from India's space missions to life of astronauts, and everything is told well with conversations through characters and knitted with beautiful illustrations. This book is for 5+, but I must admit that I had a great time reading it myself. So let's meet the people behind this wonderful addition to our libraries. So our first guest is Spurti Raman, the author of this book. Spurti is a science journalist, writer, and editor, and is joining us today from all the way from Canada. Our second guest is Nirupama Vishwanath. She's a vibrant designer and illustrator who has added colors to Spurti's words through vivid depiction. So I welcome you, Spurti and Nirupama. I request you to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sonal.
So my first question is to you, Spurti, that this book that you've written is for ages 5+. That means it involves people in their primary years of schooling. So were there any challenges or special considerations that you have to take for this target audience?
Yeah, first, thanks for having this, and thanks for inviting us, and thanks for organizing this painstakingly to all the ISF team, right? So, and thanks for the great generous introduction as well, Sonia. Yes, when I wrote this book, I don't think I had particular challenges, but as you said, there are different considerations, of course. So I am used to writing for adults. So I have been a science writer for the past 5.5 years now. And most of my writing is for, aimed at an adult who has at least a high school level knowledge of science. So when I started writing for children, which is through this book, one is obviously with adults, you can be as verbose as you would like. Even if you want to explain a simple scientific concept, I can use as many words I wanted. But with kids, you can't do that because this book is supposed to be really punchy and Nirupama has a lot of burden to explain that through her illustrations rather than me being very verbose about it. So I think that was one considerations we made sure that we were all on board with this, that it is not going to be really wordy. I should really thank Chiki, who is the publisher, who's the publisher behind Jagannath Publications. So she has been like really it's easy for writers to just write and write, right? Like we can go on and she has been really helpful in reining in my words to say, okay, this is really too long, can we make it more clearer or cut it off or whatever that is. So I should thank her for that. And again, with kids, the other thing is we also wanted to touch upon topics that are exciting for kids and not necessarily for adults. So when it even comes to space, there is a lot of things that one can talk about. And we had to work around the fact that we had about 10 to 12 spreads, like you see in the book. And we had to make sure that those spreads are utilized by topics that are catchy for kids. So that meant, I could talk about astronauts because every kid is fascinated with astronauts and they're fascinated by rockets. So I had to make sure that these are represented in the book as well. And if you would probably ask an adult, they probably would be interested in knowing the science behind a lot of these concepts. But kids are, they just want to get to the fact right away. They want to know, okay, how a rocket launches. And adults, I think as adults, we lose that curiosity in our mind as we grow, right? We don't seem to ask basic questions all the time. So we had to make sure that the book also answers the basic questions that kids might have about these concepts once we have them in the book. And then I think it was about just hunting for the quickie facts that we have in the book. Like it takes about 10 minutes to go to space for a rocket, or astronauts use a toilet which is like really small, and they have a special system of flushing it and stuff like that. These are things that people or rather kids can relate to their day-to-day life, and also not sound very jargonish or very sciencey in that sense. So hunting for those quick facts was something we consciously decided to do for this book.
I think that's a great idea to target the curiosity of this age group. And with all the facts, you're actually like entertaining all age groups like I was. So like Spurti said, Nirupama, you had a great challenge because you had to depict the book in a way that it pleases younger audience. So how was your experience when you were working for a younger audience and also incorporating a lot of science?
Oh, I had a lot of fun. And we almost, I think I remember Chiki, Spurti and I used to chat almost every day, and we had a lot of fun. So it was a process of like a couple of steps where I had to soak in the information to understand, because I'm not from the science field. And once I soak it in, I had to get tell Spurti, is my is my thought of this right? Am I understanding this right? So I had to get to know that from Spurti, and then the next step in the process was me brainstorming how I dumb it down, because for me, I had to dumb it down for myself to understand, and then I have to dumb it down for the kids to understand. And I think the most fun part was getting the colors in, because honestly, rockets don't have much color. They're just gray and they're very monotone. So I had to add some, there was a pop of orange and pink, if you see in my book, and in our book, and it really needs that because kids love color and nobody likes monochrome toys. So the same comes with books. So there was a lot of fun. So yeah.
That's nice. And we actually, like people who even make posters and all, not many might think that you have to choose the colors and designs according to the age group you're targeting, right? So thank you for sharing your process, how you did it. Spurti, you have, there are some really interesting pages that you have in this book. Like if everyone can see, it's like a day in the life of an astronaut and astronomer and space engineer. And there are like lots of interesting, like in-depth stuff as well. So how did you, gather all this information? Whom did you have to meet or speak to include all different types of views and topics in this book?
That's a very page that I can relate to my personal life very well, because a lot of that comes from my personal life. So astronauts, like what astronauts do is pretty much public knowledge, because talk about NASA, talk about ESA, talk about JAXA, all of them have pages and websites beautifully curated to just tell kids especially what astronauts do. And then you have the video technology that astronauts have also carried to space. So you have Sunita Williams and a lot of other astronauts really showing us live what they're up to in the space capsule or the ISS or whatever, right? So there's a lot of information out there from where one could draw a comic strip, if you want to say, right? So the motivation behind that page is this, that kids, when they think of space, or even adults to an extent, think of astronauts as the only people, as the only career option in some sense, right? So if you say space, then it's the astronaut who comes to mind. But I also wanted to kind of, and I grew up with that kind of a limited view, right? So now I know better, and I just want to kind of sensitize kids to the fact that it's not just astronauts who are behind this whole pursuit. There's also astronomers who do the science behind it, because astronauts, if I don't know, I mean, I'm sure many adults know, but I don't know how many kids know that they are just good pilots. Many astronauts, even like Rakesh Sharma, who was the first from India, are good pilots. I mean, he was a trained pilot. So they need to know how to maneuver. They need to know how to drive the plane, if I may say so, the rocket, if I may say so, in some sense, although most of it is automated. But yeah, so they're all trained in aviation rather than science. But the people who do the bulk of science are the astronomers. And my personal connection here is that my husband is an astronomer. So a lot of what I've written is basically drawing from what he does. So yeah, and the fact that I've had the good fortune of visiting a few astronomical observatories around the world also helped me kind of make a good guess about what one sees in an observatory, right? And it's not even that every astronomer lives with a telescope, right? So now the whole telescope technology is so automated and very remote. So one can sit in Canada and still access the telescope data from South Pole, for example, right? So the wonders of technology are so much. So I must confess that I haven't visited Hanle, but I wanted to kind of make it all more contextual to the kids that we were writing for. So that's how the Hanle thing came in here. And for the third part about space engineers, I graduated as an engineer. And I had the good fortune of appearing for ISRO's recruitment exams when they were hiring engineers. So although I decided to not pursue it and rather do my master's, I did kind of do some research about what ISRO engineers do and, what is their role specifically and stuff like that. So that's where that bit comes in. So yeah, that page is really motivated by my personal experience. And again, I have been I love biographies. So even Wikipedia pages are good, entertaining biographies for me. So I did a lot of research to kind of, understand who space engineers are, what they do specifically, and how they are involved in design of everything space. So that's where the third bit comes in there.
Thank you. I really like how you've not just done research, but you've put yourself in the shoes of your readers and thought what they would observe, and also you've emphasized on your learning throughout this journey and how different aspects from your own life, your husband's life, things you might have observed around you are put in this book. That's really interesting. And Nirupama, you have done I really like this whole illustration when
yeah, that was my favorite one to do too.
Yeah, this is
the most difficult one of the lot as well.
Yeah, it's like she has depicted a whole workspace in a that one would see in places like ISRO, and you've very beautifully shown how rockets, Indian rockets, look like. So these are very technical stuff. What research did you have to go and visit that place to draw them? How did you?
I was on the IISER website most of the time for 8 hours that I was working. So I was on the website, and Spurti had helped me a lot with quite a bit of reference images, but I also had to collect more to, to understand how it works. And thankfully, about this particular spread, there are quite a lot of photos on the ISRO website, but it's just that they're not quite in order. So Spurti had to do like a class for me as to, step 1, step 2, step 3. So, but that was a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun to work with, and was also the most difficult one to do because I had to bring it all in an isometric format, and it was fun. So, yeah.
I just wanted to add in here, Sonal, that I can give as many classes I would like, but then putting it all on paper as a story, I think the entire credit goes to Nirupama for that. Because even when I told her, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, Chiki had this fantastic vision that it has to like look like a workshop where everything is like split into
that's true.
steps. And I just filled in what steps could have been. But then I think Nirupama did a great job in kind of like putting them in place so that this all looks like everything is happening, in one dimension in space in some sense, right? So they all make sense.
I remember when we were doing this, we also had a lot of discussions on which ones would kids enjoy and which ones they would not. So we really had to like pick and choose, and kids love blast off and stuff like that. It's so exciting to see. So we were wondering that, but I think it worked out well, and we're all excited that people are enjoying this.
Sounds like you both had a really good time in your teamwork. So like many of us, like personally me, I understand the job of an illustrator, okay, the job of a writer, but how was your relationship? Like Nirupama, what was the process of like, how often did you work together with Spurti, and Spurti same for you, or how much time did you work individually, or was it like a lot of back and forth? How was your journey together as a team?
It was very collaborative. Like we were like I said, we had a WhatsApp group going on, and as I finished my rough sketches, I used to send it over to Chiki and Spurti, and they would reply, and it would be like it's like a very casual discussion, and it was a very collaborative thing that we had going on, and I'm grateful for the two of them for taking their, time out. And, they used to say, like, I remember Chiki used to say this a lot. She used to be like, this doesn't make sense and this makes sense. So that was very helpful because as an illustrator, you're just confined to, looking at your work, but you like it when people look at things in a larger perspective. So that was very helpful. Like, people who look at it from a step back, and that was very helpful. So
yeah, just to add to that and give a bit of a view of what happened before Nirupama came in, right? So when Chiki said that this was the book, and she had this like she just we had a Zoom call just to like where she was explaining that what, I'm thinking of this book, this is for kids and it's supposed to talk about India space. It was a quick like 15-minute Zoom call, if I remember it right. And she's like, you think about what we had to put in and think about it's like a board book. So she actually asked me to get a book that is also a board book, but that's from the UK, from Osborne Publishers, which had some similar kind of illustrations, right? Like they talk about trains in one book, then they talk about planes in another book, just to give a sense of, what is the kind of vision that she had with this book. And of course, a lot of such books exist with, say, NASA's space adventures, and a lot of NASA rockets, or Europe's, for example, the ESA's, for kids kind of material. But ISRO has none. I mean, for India, for kids specifically, the website at least doesn't have anything. So she was like, we are doing so many things in space, but it's not in a way that's very accessible to kids of that age, where they're very intrigued by, cosmos and what's happening, and then they see all these pretty pictures of Chandrayaan taking off or every other rocket that's out there. But then they also would like to know what India has been done. So she was just giving me this primer, and I was like, okay, fine. And I thought through it. So I started with doing some kind of research. So I don't have kids of my own. So I wanted to kind of understand what kids really like, because that changes, right? Maybe we like something else in the pre-social media era, but today kids are glued to all kind of social media so much that they know what's the in thing. And I always think I am outdated in that sense. So I did like a survey, a pre-interview with a few kids that I knew in my circles to understand, what is it that really what is it that they really find fascinating with space. So the insights were not really surprising, because they said it's rockets, they said it's astronauts and all that. But I just wanted to kind of make sure we are still relevant, because I might be thinking something that I as a kid thought, but may not necessarily be true. But then they had some interesting pointers to say. They want to know how, say, for example, rockets really go into space and things like that. So that's how some details in the book really focus on the how part. And they also wanted to know the space missions like Chandrayaan, Mangalyaan. We all keep saying that, but then what they did, or like what these missions found, is at the end going to be a scientific paper, right? And how do we condense that to kids? So we were just trying to brainstorm on that. And then I kind of sent Chiki the first draft, if I may say so, by laying out these particular spreads, saying that, okay, we start with, rockets, or I think even the first page talks about like what exactly do we send to space, right? So we send a lot of things. So it's not always rockets. I mean, it's not always satellites that we send to. We send spacecrafts of different forms, right? So that was like an introduction, and then we go on to talk about rockets and space missions and everything. But also one other thing that I got inputs from the kids I interviewed was about the people behind this, because that again is a often missed part. I mean, we do know a few key people, like we know when we talk about astronauts, we know Kalpana Chawla, at least when I was a kid, because that was the image that a lot of people had in their mind and stuff. So we wanted to kind of also make sure that we give some credits to the humans behind this in ISRO right now. So that's another must-have thing that we had in mind. So the first draft that I sent Chiki was like, obviously there was a lot of things she, like Nirupama she commented saying that, okay, this is good information but not necessarily interesting for kids. And so we had to work from there. And one of the things she wanted to kind of make sure was that we have analogies that are punchier again. Like, for example, breakfast. When kids in India eat idli and sambar, they should also know that DRDO is doing something for astronauts to eat the same thing when they go to space and stuff like that. So it's a combination of all that really came in. And then Nirupama was there, and like she mentioned the rest of the story, it was more of things working on Zoom, and surprisingly I did.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing that. And I haven't met Chiki or Nirupama in person. So all our association and knowing each other has been through Zoom and WhatsApp and things like that. So yeah, I think that kind of tells you how much we had to get on Zoom to kind of know each other's work style, and what is expected of the whole book at the end of it.
Another thing which they really helped me was they gave me some, I'm this kind of a person, I actively seek feedback, because the vision looks good in my head, but that doesn't mean it gets translated in the right way. So they were very good with feedback. They would say both Spurti and Chiki. So that helped me a lot. So
thank you for helping us understand, all the efforts that go behind writing and illustrating a book, and also letting our listeners, our viewers today know Chiki's contribution to the book, because she couldn't join us, sadly. So now I'll take a break from direct questions to you and involve our audience in some fun questions. So I request everyone who is watching us on Zoom or YouTube to answer the next 3 questions in the Q&A box that they can see or on their YouTube comment section. What is the topic or field in astrophysics or space science that intrigues you the most? Let's see what we get from the audience, and till they are answering, Spurti and Nirupama, which are your favorite topics or fields? Nirupama first. Would you like to go first?
I'm not too much of a science program watcher, but I remember that as a kid I used to be stuck on Nat Geo, and I remember there was this really nice show that came out called Cosmos by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and that was very interesting for me because he really used to put down everything into terms that teenagers would understand. So like I used to find it very fascinating to know about how the solar system works and how the planets work, and that was really fun for me to watch. So yeah.
And Spurti, for you, which is your favorite topic? I know you've talked about so many things in the book, but which is your the go-to thing when you see it anywhere around you?
I think anything that is with respect to understanding how the universe works, like not something that we specifically focused in the book, but generally understanding how the Big Bang came about and what really happened after that, which is interesting because if you think, we are just a tiny dot in the whole scheme of universe, right? And we are able to, in some sense, comprehend what happened at that huge scale 13.8 billion years ago, right? Like, how do we even look back that far is something that always amazes me. And yeah, it's a lot of theoretics. Nobody has really seen it, and we couldn't have been there to witness all this, that I understand. But the fact that we are able to do this, we are able to precisely say, this happened 13.8 billion years ago. And then after 3 seconds of the universe formation, these things formed and things like that. It always excites me. But as kids, obviously, I don't know how much of this would have made sense if I had been exposed to, but I wasn't. So my go-to research was this one book I had won as a prize in some competition. I don't understand it. It was something about question and answer for kids. So you have these typical books, right, where you're like generally frequently asked questions kind of thing for kids. So that had a chapter on space and universe and all that. So that was something that I found fascinating when I was a kid. But I think a lot of my understanding about the subject came about as an adult when I visited, like I said, a couple of observatories. So I've been to the one in South Africa when we were there. We lived in South Africa for about 3 years. So there I had visited this whole setup where the square kilometer array, which is a mega science project that is in place, is coming up. So I had the good fortune of visiting their outreach center just to know what is happening and things. So that kind of intrigued me. And Lowell Observatory in Arizona is another place that I visited, which again, the amount of outreach these kind of observatories put out, right, is amazing. Just kind of you can live there for about 3-4 days, just camp in that particular outreach center, observing all that you have around you. So yeah, those things really kind of fascinated me. And thanks to Chiki, I had an opportunity to put all those learnings into some kind of productive output, if I may say so.
And I was just looking at the answers we've got from our audience. People are really interested. I think comets is one popular topic, and then Milky Way galaxy and Jupiter and Saturn, Jupiter and its moons, Saturn rings, I think all the fancy stuff, and Mars colonization, life on Mars, and gases on Venus. Okay, this is something new that's not so popular so far, and black holes. So a lot of diverse interest, and I can assure everyone that many of these interests you might find in this book. which will tell you actually how, we reach to the information that is hidden in these black holes and planets and everything. So Nirupama and Spurti have already told us, but what I would like to ask the audience, what is your like favorite book or movie about space science or astrophysics or like sci-fi that you've really enjoyed, viewing? And meanwhile, I'll just share that my interest in this field started from movies. I would say sci-fi was something that made me interested in this field, and I am a physics student during my bachelor's, but even then I was more inclined towards optics and all. But then these great stuff that they're doing at these outreach centers and science museum, I saw a film on how we are made of stars, and that got me like, oh wow, back to creation and everything. So let's see what everyone is writing. Cosmos by Carl Sagan, the old version, Interstellar, the movie, Gravity, Avatar, and movie again, Independence Day, and that was a really fun one with aliens and all, no? So Big Bang Theory, a very popular series, definitely. Raj, the Indian representation was talking about that. Star Wars, of course, and movies, Geostorm and Martian. Okay, good suggestions for everyone who's not seen these movies. Mission Mangal, a movie from India, and Lost in Space, another series. I think it's pretty new. I think Star Trek and Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, Special Theory by Albert Einstein, and Tricks TV by Kaushik Bhattacharya, something again from India. Gravity, best one. Back to the Future. So many suggestions. Wow. And apart from like we've talked about books and all, but who are your, like, do you have a favorite researcher or science communicator who's working in this field, or even an artist that's working on this field, Nirupama and Spurti? And I would like audience to also input if they have any favorite scientist or researcher or astronomer. Please share their names in the Q&A section.
I don't know, maybe I'm an oddball here, but I don't have specific names to share with respect to people, but I do appreciate the kind of outreach a lot of organizations have. Like, for example, when we talk about particle physics, so I'm right now writing another book about, a lot of basic concepts in physics, chemistry, and biology. The kind of outreach, like, for example, Fermilab has on particle physics is amazing. And the kind of outreach NASA even has on, specific their mission specific thing or space specific subjects, that again is really amazing. And each of these organizations have different people do different kinds of outreach. Like some people who are really emotive do it for kids, which again is very captivating, and people who do it for adults are also emotive, but then they kind of give you these interesting examples that you can relate to and stuff, which obviously is the hallmark of a good science communicator, to make it very relatable, right? So I think just organizational psychom is something that I am really fascinated by. But again, of course, there are a lot of individual science writers and journalists who are very, specific with like their niche. Like Carl Zimmer, for example, is great with human ancestry and where we came from kind of, articles that he writes. Ed Yong, I'm following his COVID coverage, for example, that has been really great. So I think bits and pockets in some sense, but yeah, I don't have a single answer, unfortunately. But I do enjoy a lot of other people who do this, who do science communication anyway.
And what about you, Nirupama?
So my knowledge in this field is very less, but what I got from this book, the amount of information about science I got was when I did this book, and I think that says a lot. So I think personally, I don't have any favorites, but I think what I hope is I want to see more women in science. So, I just want to see more women science communicators. So it's exciting to see how many things that we can do. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And many women have, in fact, contributed to our mega space missions. And we have our name from our audience, Dr. Ritu Karidhal. And if I'm not
Karidhal,
wrong,
yeah.
yeah, she was involved in Mangalyaan, no? And Neil deGrasse Tyson, a very famous name these days, Stephen Hawking, and Dr. Nikki Fox from NASA. She's a heliophysicist, and somebody agrees to that NASA has been doing a lot of outreach. And best science communication outlet, somebody has suggested Quanta magazine, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, APJ Abdul Kalam, Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, Astro Raja, Kalpana Chawla, Sunita Williams, so many names, Carl Sagan and Kalpana Chawla. I think everyone, like especially little girls, as when we were in school, the incident happened, and like she was like an inspiration to many. So best writers, we have Erica Clarish. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right. Natalie and Ed Young and Sylvia Nasser. So some good suggestions for everyone to write and read about these. I'll go back to questions. To you, Spurti and Nirupama. Thank you, everyone, for contributing to our discussion. So, Spurti, this book focuses on India's work on space science, and you have involved a lot of diversity. I see all male and female representation, skin colors, and everything. So, how do you think this type of book focusing on India can change, attitudinal behavior or attitudes of people in India, when places like NASA are famous and ISRO, we have so many other people working in different sectors, but how do you think such books can help, bring light to their efforts as well?
Yeah, one thing I just want to point out is that yes, NASA is great, but NASA is not going to talk about ISRO engineers or ISRO scientists. I mean, not that they shouldn't, but it's just that they have other stuff to really talk about their missions and stuff. So I think we need to kind of put the spotlight on and what is happening in our own backyard, because if we don't, then I don't think anybody will. And again, as kids, right? When you show them something that is in the backyard, it seems more tangible. I can grow up looking at all the NASA engineers, but I would always, at the back of my mind, keep thinking that, hey, I am staying so far, like thousands of miles away from where this action is happening. So I can never be an astronaut, is what people might think. And of course, as kids, you don't want to shush their, aspirations, saying that, oh, you can't do it because you are in India and NASA is somewhere else, right? So I think the more light we throw on what is happening in our own backyard, it becomes very relatable to kids as they're growing. It becomes like they can see for example, say, I'm just taking this name of Ritu Karidhal, right? Young kids, young girls growing up can look at her and say, okay, I want to be someone like her. She looks like me, so maybe I will one day become like her, rather than just looking at somebody who is white or who is not of the same skin color, not of the same culture in that sense, right? So I think one thing that not just this book, any book that talks about Indian homegrown science tells kids that this is all possible to achieve, and that it really shows who the superheroes could be for them when they are growing up. I think that's one thing books like this can help with. And second, in an ecosystem where there isn't so much of outreach to tell kids, where or how this is done, not everybody can access websites like NASA, right? Not that it takes money to do it. It's just that many people may not know about it. So in that sense, I think having books like this, again, not just this book, but any book that is like this, can really bridge the gap for people who may not know, and substitute their knowledge with what is possible and what India has done, etc. What we see in newspapers is very like a newsy piece. Something happened today and that's going to garbage in a couple of days. But books like this kind of also help to chronicle in some sense, as kids, as concepts, and maybe somebody is going to look at the book book after 30 years and say, oh yeah, when we read this is how the world was, and maybe in 30 years I'm sure so many things would have changed. So it's a more relatable chronology of things, I would say.
Yeah, I think science has to be celebrated globally, but representation like these that you've shown in your book helps people, relate and, oh, this is a person similar to me, and if they can achieve it, I can achieve it. There are facilities that I can, go to start with. So that's really important. So thank you, Nirupama, Spurti, and Chiki for doing this for all of us. I'll start taking some questions from the audience now. Nirupama, the first one is to you, that how, it's by an anonymous attendee, how different was the process of creating science illustration compared to that of regular illustrations?
Quite different actually, because like I said, firstly, science is a different topic for me. So there was more research than illustration itself, because once you crack the research, it just clicks, because you just know that it works. So in that way, it was very different when compared to, any nature or, like a story and anything. So, and also another important thing was this, there's not much room for imagination, because everything is out there, it's all the information. So in that way it was very different. And it was because science is constantly changing every day, so that was very different when compared to any normal storybook or say a nature illustration when you teach kids about animals. So this is not like that. This requires a lot of work, and in that way it was very different. Yeah.
Thank you. Spurti, the next question is for you, by Janki Patel. How much time did it take you to complete, writing this whole book?
I think it's a work of about 2-3 months to get the text really crisp and clear and the way we wanted in the book. And then, of course, while we were kind of through the final couple of drafts, I think Nirupama was also kind of working in parallel with with the illustrations. So I think about 4 months together, yeah. Nirupama, if I'm right.
Yeah. I remember I took about 1.5 to 2 months to illustrate the entire thing. And so I think Spurti, like she said, 4 months is.
And I was working on this book full time when I was, on it. So, at least the first couple of months to get my stuff out there. So, yeah, that's how long it took.
4 months of hard work, and we have a wonderful result with us. Nirupama, some people, like, there are common questions. They want to know what software or like tools you used to do the illustrations.
So I have my iPad and my pencil. So I mostly use this. There's a very good software called Procreate where you can make an entire children's book on it, and I also have another pen tablet which I use, and then I combine everything on Photoshop, and that's how I work.
I mean, it sounds so simple when you say it, but I know it's so complicated, But it's like, yeah, shifting from this, my iPad.
Well, I'm sure kids these days are way too tech savvy, and I'm sure they all know how to use an iPad and pencil, and it's a lot easier because it's like drawing on paper, but you're drawing digitally, so that's why. But yeah, I'm sure kids these days are very tech savvy.
Yeah, I think, and we might have many more budding illustrators as these technologies advance, right? They're becoming more user friendly and all. Spurti, there's a question for you, that do you have any plans to produce a book in any local language, like any Indian local language, like somebody's specifically for Kannada?
I wish I could, in the sense that I was a publisher. But yeah, I'm open to it if there is something on the table. even translation of what we have so far is a great start, I would think. I definitely would love to see more of such outreach material in regional languages in India, and I'm a big supporter of that kind of outreach. But yeah, as it stands, I'm not the publisher, but if there is a way to kind of do this without having a lot of copyright sensitive bureaucratic hurdles, I would have loved to.
Hopefully something happens. There's one very interesting question for you, Nirupama, that did you have any clashes with the editor or the writer between actually the three of you when your vision didn't match? So we've known how well you work together, but what were the points for you?
I don't remember having any of them, honestly, because I think we were all very frank and honest. So that really helped. Like, Chiki was very frank about what she wanted, and it didn't come across as a clash. It just came across as, feedback, and any feedback is good feedback. So we didn't have any clashes. It was just a frank, honest discussion. So yeah.
Yeah, I
Is this
agree with
honest,
that.
Murthy? Is this honest?
I would agree with what Nirupama said, and I remember, so Chiki's background is not in science, I guess, in that sense. So initially, when I told her a lot of how things work, she was also surprised, and she's like, "Oh, really? I didn't know about this and stuff." And honestly, this was a learning experience for me too. A lot of things I learned when I was researching for the book. So, the good thing is, on the science thing, she gave me the entire freedom, saying that you know what you're doing, so I'm not going to interfere on that. So she gave me that free hand there. And clashes, I don't really think clashes, like Nirupama said, is just feedback. So maybe there's this one illustration where I had thought of a different thing, and there's another thing that came up, and I would tell Nirupama, saying that this doesn't really match, and I would tell Chiki that if we are doing this really doesn't really go hand in hand and stuff. So yeah, that's about it that I can remember.
Yeah, I think then you were just three talented people matched perfectly, and you had your roles really well divided, because one was like an expert of illustration, an expert of science, an expert of publishing a whole book for young audiences. And I would just like to show the book again. It's like a very pretty thing, and it says learn with pictures, and there are lots of different pictures there. It's not very texty. It is a good balance that everybody would like to see in a book. And if you have children in your home to get it, I personally really like it. So this is my personal promotion of the book. So this is a really great way to engage people with science, and you've had your own experience in this. Spurti has been doing this since a long time. Nirupama, you are doing different types of communications through your art. How do you think events like India Science Festival, in which we are participating, is helping bring science closer to people? Nirupama, we'll start with you.
Science is a lot of fun. Like it's a lot of fun to know about what goes on in space where you very few people have gone. So this really helps in creating awareness for a lot of kids to do so many things, and it opens avenues to newer professions and stuff like that. And it's very intriguing. Talks. I mean, on a good day without COVID, we would have had this as a we would have probably sat together, met each other, and we would have had it. But sadly, we have to do it on Zoom. But this again is so interesting, because we get to meet a lot of people who are in the science field, and you get to know a lot of insights from them. And it's a lot of fun with so many people asking so many questions, and technical or non-technical. It really opens up another side of your mind about science. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I would like to think that the fact that we are talking about this as a day-to-day conversation, the fact that this is open to public in the first place, which many science events are not, kind of has this kind of conversation going on in like an everyday affair in people's life, right? So you don't turn up to attend events like this in an everyday. I mean, that's not a usual thing. People don't just bump into a webinar about science, in their every walk of life. But the fact that this is so approachable and this is so reachable and it's free, because that also matters, right? I think that really helps at least pick people's curious minds. Maybe there's just one takeaway from this whole webinar for people, but the fact that they're giving their hour in the day rather than watching a Netflix show or whatever it is that people seem to be distracted every single day these days, I think it speaks volume. And with a lot of content out there, there's always this procrastination saying that, oh, I'll learn about it a little later, or whenever I have time and stuff like that. But to get live people like humans out here and not just keep this as a monologue, I think efforts like this really help in telling people that science is again a human endeavor, because that is often a missed thing in public discourse, right? We often think science is done by scientists, but who are scientists? Scientists are humans, and they look like you, me, and everybody else. And the fact that you put a picture on somebody's name, you put a live human representation of science, I think is a big game changer for science communication going forward.
Definitely, I agree. And hats off to India Science Fest team for putting on the show even during such trying times, and the diversity of topics they've chosen. So I think we are like almost towards the end of our session, and I have so many more questions, but maybe for some other time. And thank you so much, Spurti and Nirupama, for sharing your journey towards, building such an intriguing, interesting, and engaging book for.
Thank you for having us. I would say this was a lot of fun.
Sure. Thank you. And everyone, please do check out their book. I think the link should be somewhere in your chat or Q&A section. Now I'll hand over to Sarah, and I wish everyone a beautiful evening ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sonal, and to Spurti and Nirupma as well. I really enjoyed listening to this conversation, and it was a great session. And like you, I also hope and wish that we see more indigenously produced science-themed books that not only inspire young people, but also showcases India's contributions to science and technology. And like Spurti said, also humanizes science, because we don't see that human side of science often. And I think books are a great medium to really showcase that human side of science. So, and I also agree that I hope we can also see more women scientists and scientists from minorities and marginalized groups represented in these books, and maybe in other forms as well. So thank you all for this really enriching and thought-provoking discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure our audience did too. So thanks everyone for joining in for this session. And in case you're interested in learning about fact-checking, I mean, in case you are wondering how to navigate this world of fake news and misinformation, especially to do with science, and we are going to start a workshop in just about a minute or two with the journalist Brooke Borrell. So I think one of the ISF coordinators will drop the link to that workshop in the chat. So if you're interested, please join in. And with that, thank you all, and please stay safe and well, and catch you at the next event. Bye. Bye. Bye, Sonal. Bye, Spurti. Bye, Nirupma.
Bye. Bye.